let me first start with just kind of a recap of what happened last year. In order to determine where we're going, let's first revisit where we've been. And so the big story, of course, was extremely low inventory. It's been that way for years. COVID-19 hit. Prior to that, we were seeing appreciation in our market. Prices were going up. Our market was doing well. Markets across the country were doing well. But then the pandemic hit, and it really accelerated things to the point where nationally prices were up about 20%. We were slightly under that in our Charleston market. We were about 17%. But with prices being up 20% and the market just being on fire, let's talk about some of the reasons why. So first of all, we had a foreclosure and eviction moratorium. Usually when people are kind of knocked back on their heels, when businesses were forced to close, when we were forced to stay at home, usually that results in some people experiencing financial hardship, and as a result, distress sales occur. Well, we didn't really have much of that at all. Very, very few homes were in distress that ended up trading hands. You can also thank the forbearance that we had on government-backed loans. People were able to go to their lender and say, hey, I need to take a break for 3 months or 6 months or 12 months in some instances. And they would say, okay, well, we'll press the pause button on you making mortgage payments, but after 6 months, you got to pay us back all at once, and then your payments will resume. And there were plenty of people that had the ability to do that and just took some time off, basically. And then they got right back into the saddle. They stockpiled some cash, and everything was okay. Other people ended up having to refinance their property, and maybe they owned it for a few years. Let's say they owned it for 5 years, and for those that don't really understand this, but have probably know this in the back of your mind, the first few years of mortgage payments really are just attacking interest. You're not really buying down the principal balance of your mortgage. And so you finally kind of make some headway in buying down some interest so that you can start attacking the principal. But if you went into forbearance, you couldn't make those payments all at once. You then had to refinance. What they do is they'd say, well, let's just re-amortize your loan over a 30 or 40-year period, and let's lower your payments, and let's just basically start over. Well, to some, that sounded great, but to those that really understand how interest works, now you've got to restart that whole cycle of basically just paying interest on your loan. But in the grand scheme of things, we did not see very many distress sales. We also had fantastically low interest rates, and right now we still do. And here's what I think you need to understand about interest rates and just about buyer mentality. People usually buy as much as they can get pre-approved for. The overwhelming majority of people are going to just buy the maximum amount of home they can afford. So, yes, of course, we see people that say, hey, I know I can get approved for a $700,000 house, but we're going to stick in the $450,000, $500,000 range. When you have a market that's seller-driven, when prices are skyrocketing, when 6 months ago you could have afforded a home that was 300 square feet larger with some bells and whistles, and now you're looking at a smaller home with less upgrades. The idea of not going close to the maximum amount you can afford, in theory, is nice, but then they start looking at what they can actually buy for that reduced amount, and they say, we can do this. We are going to do this. And so they end up increasing their purchasing power because they have the ability to. They're approved for that. And that's usually just the way things go. We find that a lot of buyers end up increasing their price range when they get frustrated over losing bidding wars, or frankly just aren't that excited about the properties they're viewing. So we have low interest rates. Now, we've already heard that we're expecting 3 separate increases as they taper off from quantitative easing. So we are expecting interest rates to go up. That's a very dangerous game to play in terms of when and by how much. I certainly don't know. We just know that theoretically they will be going up at some point in the near future. The other thing to consider here, especially as it relates to low inventory, is that new construction has been behind demand, and it's been behind for quite some time. We're dealing with high labor costs. We're dealing with high material costs. We're dealing with supply chain issues. I mean, I got new windows and doors put into my house last year, and it took us 7 months to get new windows and doors. And the contractor said we were lucky. Usually it's taking around 9 months. So we're having all of these issues that are increasing cost. And we've also got land costs that are going up. So where we need inventory the most is in the entry-level market. I mean, if you look in the Charleston market at, that kind of $350,000 and below price range in most markets, especially in Dorchester and Berkeley County. And in Charleston County, frankly, that doesn't buy you very much. There's like a month, maybe less, supply of inventory. Those homes are flying off the shelf. Prices are going up dramatically. Well, the problem for builders is that they're not really playing in that arena because they can't make enough money to justify building entry-level housing. And we need that type of housing because not just for builders, but for people to sell so that they can then sell that property and go and buy something more expensive. Another challenge we're faced with is the fact that the number of vacant homes for sale is at an all-time low, which of course detracts from available inventory. A lot of people cannot take the risk of putting their home on the market and then trying to find something to buy. They want to do it the other way. They want to go and find something that they want to purchase, try and negotiate a deal with that seller with the caveat that, hey, we also need to sell our house, so you're going to have to give us some time to do that. And we've talked, at length about different ways of combating that. And we're going to talk about it just a little bit more, a little bit later on in the show. Some of the creative options that you have as a seller or as a buyer that don't necessarily mean you have to approach a seller and say, hey, I want to buy your house, but I have to sell mine first. And so if you accept my offer, then I'll put my home on the market and we'll try and sell it as quickly as we can. Well, for a seller in a market like this where properties are selling in days, it's not a very attractive proposition. So we need to be creative in thinking about some other solutions to that challenge. And we have those solutions. We'll talk about that in just a little while. The other thing to take into account here in terms of what happened last year and even slightly the year before that was that, we had this whole work from anywhere movement, which meant a great reshuffling of society into housing. A lot of people have already made that transition. People from, think about it, New York, Chicago, a lot of people from California, and basically everywhere in between. They're moving where they want to move. And guess what? Charleston is one of those areas. So, when we look at prices, house prices should be riding high, but they have risen so far, so fast that they are increasingly disconnected from household income, from apartment rent, and construction costs. If prices consistently rise more quickly than income, then obviously owning a home just becomes unaffordable for a lot of people. If prices get too far ahead of rent, then it makes more financial sense to rent than it does to buy, especially for first-time home buyers. And if prices outstrip the cost of constructing homes, then builders have a strong incentive to put up more homes. I think a big concern coming into this year is debt and just taking on too much of it. Because I think we all get, not all of us, but it's common for a lot of people to get used to whatever type of market you're in. What we experienced last year is not normal. A lot of agents are very spoiled in that they think that selling real estate is really easy. Obviously, they've never been an agent in a buyer's market where, instead of having 1,300 homes for sale like we do right now, we had almost 13,000. So a concern is just taking on too much debt, along with, of course, increased spending. Everything's more expensive now, right? So maxing out loans, pulling out equity, this whole kind of spend it if you got it mentality. Every time that I earn more income, I increase my lifestyle. That's how a lot of people got into trouble last time, especially once their adjustable rate mortgage spiked. A problem we don't really have right now, like we did during the pre-crash lending environment of 2008. In fact, we've got a lot of differences between then and now. But if you look at where we're headed, I mean, obviously one of two things is going to happen. The most kind of graceful scenario is for prices to cool off a little bit, which is what people are calling for. The rate by which prices go up will slow down. It will allow income and rents and construction costs to kind of catch up with everything, ultimately with the idea of balancing out some of the affordability of housing. Of course, the other side of the coin here is that house prices continue to quickly appreciate. We get more speculation from investors and from kind of everyday buyers and sellers that, hey, no matter what happens, my value is going to go up, and they bank on that. And then a bubble inflates and at some point will burst. I mean, that scenario does not end well. House prices would ultimately experience a pretty hard decline if this continues. What we're doing right now, or what we're experiencing right now, in no way, shape, or form is sustainable. And I think we all know that. So we've got a really close eye on it this year. I think that is sparking some people to say, you know what, I'm gonna sell and I'm gonna get out while the getting's good. Interest rates are low. Prices on what I'm selling is high. Yeah, I might pay more. Of course, I will pay more for something I'm going to buy, but I get to lock in a low interest rate. I get to cash out my equity. I get to take advantage of high consumer confidence in the real estate market, and I can settle in for the next several years. So I tell you what, when we come back, we're going to talk about what's going to happen with this inventory. Is it going to come back? When will it come back? Why is it so low? And we're going to talk about the impact of that on both buyers and sellers in this type of market. So stick around. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. And remember, if you have some questions for me, if you want to learn more about the value of your home, you're thinking about selling, you're thinking about buying, or both, maybe you'd like to consider investing in real estate this year. We'd love the opportunity to help. We've done well over 1,000 transactions here locally, top 1% of agents for, 13 years now. So the number to call or text is 843-800-0065, 843-800-0065. Or you can always visit us online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. And you can always send me an email, brian@brianbeattyteam.com. Stick around, folks, for more of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.
Hear the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show every Saturday morning at 9 and each Sunday morning at 10 on 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.